Okay, next topic is conducting job analysis. Okay, previously we looked at the importance of job analysis, a good format of job description, and preparation for job analysis. And now is the actual process, conducting the job analysis. Okay, in your textbook, it differentiates between a common method of job analysis, very comprehensive, applicable in all type of situations, applicable in all type of jobs. The next is alternative job analysis methods, which is very specific, very specific, and sometimes applicable to some types of profession but not to others, and applicable for certain types of position, not for others. But the most important part is for us to understand there are two methods or approach, common approach and alternative approach, alternative methods. And we'll discuss in more detail on the common methods. And for the alternative methods, it is good for you to have this what we call exposure and this awareness that they are also alternative methods to that. But we're not going to discuss in details on the alternative methods, but more important for us to understand the common methods. Okay, for the common methods of job analysis, there are 5 processes that we need to understand. Okay, in order for us to produce a good job description, we need to conduct 5 processes. Starting with identify task performed, write task statement, the second process. The third process, rate task statements. The fourth process, determine essential KESAUS, the competencies or job specification. And the last process is to select tests which can assess or examine or taps the KESAUS. Okay, so there are 5 processes for common method job analysis. Identify task performed, write task statement, rate task statements, determine essential KESAUS, and lastly, selecting tests to tap KESAUS. Okay, for the first task, to identify what are the activities, what are the responsibilities, what are the duties of the job incumbents for a specific positions, we need to identify what are the tasks performed by them. Okay, so how can we do this, identifying those tasks? First, we need to gather existing information. Okay, say for examples, for the position, they already have a previous job description, and now they are embarked or the starting process of reviewing those job description. So the former job description will give a valuable information. So you need to gather that. Say for examples, it's a new company or a new position created. You can also ask people or incumbent from other companies, human resource from other companies. If you have the network, you have friends working with other companies who have similar position, so that you can have a general idea what is the job all about. So gathering existing information. Sometimes looking at the advertisement for job vacancies, or you look at the ONET. ONET is basically database for us industrial organization psychologists to understand a specific job positions, KESAUS, and many other things in that database. Okay, the ONET. So we can gather existing information, and in fact, if you have the resources to access internal, online database, journal database, you can also search for the information of that particular position. So next is we can interview subject matter expert, okay, to identify the task. Subject matter expert, or we use acronym as SMEs. It's not small medium enterprises. Okay, it's subject matter expert. We can interview subject matter expert to identify the task. So subject matter expert in this sense could be someone who are very well known in those position. Okay, well known in those position. It could be in the forms of IO psychologist consultants. It could be in the forms of people who created that positions. Okay, nowadays people no longer mentioned as celebrity. Okay, nowadays we have influencer. Okay, I just get to know about this social media, social SOCMED or social media people who are popular in social media, they call as social media influencer or influencer. So basically, these types of terminologies sometimes are very new. So you need to interview those who invent them. Okay, for example, Industrial Revolution 4.0. What are the requirements? People who are working in these industries, and now we heard about the upcoming Industrial Revolution 5.0. Okay, so there are always revolution, there are new jobs invention, there are new job created. So sometimes we need to interview subject matter experts. Okay, so next, how can we identify the tasks that need to be performed by the position or the job incumbents? We can observe the incumbent themselves. Okay, we observe what they do, how they do it, when they do it, what are the requirements that they use, and what are the skills, knowledge, and abilities that they have. Okay, so by observing the incumbents. And lastly, we can even participate in the job itself. Of course, there are pros and cons to all of these methods, but a combination of multiple methods is always advisable. Okay, so the first part, gathering existing informations. We can review existing job description, task inventories, and training manuals. Okay, the one that used or applied by the HR personnel on the training and developments. We can always refer to that to understand, especially on the parts of their kesaus or competencies. So there are many sources of information. Okay, among others, the organization which the incumbent are working, or other organization, okay, which have similar positions. We can also refer to trade publications, okay, publications that refers to the works and professions. We can refer to them. Journal articles can also be referred to, like I mentioned before. Occupational and career information system, or what I just mentioned as ONET. Employment advertisement, certification and training resources, and technical and research report. So these are among some of the sources that we can refer to gather existing informations on the tasks that need to be performed by the job that we are doing the analysis. Okay, so besides looking at the available or existing information, like I mentioned, we can also interview SMEs or subject matter expert. It can be in the form of individuals interview, or individual sessions, or it could be in group session, or it could be in the form of committee approach. For the individual, we can interview the SMEs at one person at one time. Okay, sometimes people with very high positions, they don't have very flexible time. We have to follow their times. So whenever they are available, so we have to go and meet them in person. So interview them one by one. And second, we can also interview SMEs in group. Okay, in groups, such as we interview more than one SMEs at the same time. Okay, we bring them together like a focus group discussion, or what we call as subject matter experts conference, SME conference. Okay, so we can bring them together. Nowadays, we have the flexibility of online meetings with a lot of platforms, Zooms, WebEx, Google Meet, and then Microsoft Teams, and other meetings platforms. So we can conduct them online as well, beside the alternative traditional way of meeting physically. Okay, and we can also interview or conduct SME session through committee approach. So what is committee approach? We bring together a group of subject matter experts, sometimes 4 people, sometimes 5 people, sometimes 7 people, and meets and brainstorms the major duties involved in a job. Okay, in a job. I give you examples. If you know about the hierarchy of academic professions, like what I'm doing, okay, so we have lecturers. So lecturers is equal to assistant professor. But in Malay, we don't call it as penolong professor, but we call it as pensyarah kanan. So that is basically the entry levels or the most junior academics after PhD. Okay, senior pensyarah senior ataupun or we don't call senior lecturers in English, we call it as assistant professor. So after assistant professor, we have associate professor, or in Malay we call it as Professor Madya. Okay, and then after that we have professorship. Okay, professors. So in Malaysia, we have three categories of professor. Professor A, Professor B, and Professor C. So this is different grades. Okay, Professor A is the highest, Professor B is the second highest, Professor C is basically the entry level when you get the professor. So professors in a normal government scheme equals to JUSASI. Okay, it's one of the highest achievement for the public servants. So it's JUSASI. But after that, they are no longer what we call achievement previously. So we will get emeritus. Emeritus is not a ranking of professor. Emeritus is an award given to retired professors who are still actively involved in scholarship or usually involved in research, involved in consultation. So the former university award them the status of emeritus professors so that they will receive some privilege, sometimes facilities and sometimes assistance, sometimes officers, so that they can continue contributing to the body of knowledge, emeritus professors. And then in Malaysia we have royal professors, Professor Diraja. Our last Professor Diraja Engku Aziz just passed away a couple of years, last year or last 2 years, I don't remember. So currently so that is basically the original ranking of academics in Malaysia. But in 2015, Malaysia have created a new position, a new position, what we call as Professor Ulung. Professor Ulung. So this Professor Ulung is basically a job, a position, but position for country, not for universities. Even though they are stationed in one universities, usually they are former universities, like previous one in UIA, we have Professor Ulung Tan Sri Kamal Hassan, Professor Kamal Hassan. So Prof Kamal Hassan, even though he is stationed in IUMs, he actually is the assets of the country. So in 1 year, only 3 Professor Ulungs will be appointed. I think as of now, we only have 6 Professor Ulung in Malaysia. I only know one. I also know that Professor Ulung Shamsul from UKM, and the rest I don't really know Professor Ulung. So Professor Ulung is a job profession, is a job created by the governments. So in order for them to highlight what is the role and responsibilities, so they bring on top other professors to discuss. So these professors are the SMEs to discuss what is the role, what is the need to create, why this position need to be created. What are their roles, what are their activities, what are their tasks that need to perform to fulfill their role as Professor Ulung. I do not know what Ulung means in English, sorry for that. So basically they are using committee approach. So for SME interviews can be conducted individually, can be conducted in group, and can be conducted through committee approach. So next, observation. Observing the incumbents to know what are their jobs, what are their duties, what are the responsibilities, tasks, and activities that they are doing. So observation are useful job analysis methods, especially when used in conjunction with other methods. It's not a standalone method, and usually we combine it with interview. The advantage of observing the incumbents, the current employees, it will allow us, the job analysts, to see the worker do their jobs and thus obtain valuable information that the worker may have forgotten to mention during the interview. Sometimes they feel that it's not that important, but they have been doing it most of the times or sometimes, so they forgot to mention it, and when observing they doing their work, we will be able to identify the tasks that are not mentioned during the interview. The disadvantage, observation is very obtrusive. We don't feel comfortable, and we feel awkward when people observe us doing work. Take example that you are answering exams, and then your teachers or your lecturers walk by and stop by your table and watch you answering your answers. They give us an awkward feelings. It's obtrusive. Once employees know they are being watched, their behaviors usually change. They do not really portray their real behavior, which deny us, the job analyst, from obtaining an accurate picture of the way the jobs is being done. Okay, remember about the Hawthorne studies in the histories of it was psychology. So basically it's the same case here. Okay, when people know, people realize that they are being observed, and in fact they are being evaluated sometimes, so they don't really show the real behavior. Okay, and lastly, or to identify the task, we can also perform the jobs, which is the job participation. Okay, which job analysts actually performing or doing the jobs being analyzed. Okay, of course, if that job is simple and everyone can do it, or even the analysts have prior experience or been trained, it will be better. Okay, it requires training and prior experience. However, not all professions, not all jobs are suitable for us to be involved. Okay, the job participation not suitable for jobs that have high risk and dire consequences for error. Okay, if you want to do the jobs of surgery, okay, doctors, okay, surgeons, and then you not simply can do it, okay, because the consequences are so vital if there are mistakes and we don't have enough training, or we don't even have the knowledge to do it. So better for you to observe instead of doing it yourself. Okay, so that is the first process of doing the job analysis for the common methods of doing job analysis, which is to identify the task. But remember, during that process, the data, the information that we get is still raw. Okay, it's basically in a conversational or in an observation note. Okay, conversational form, or it's still in our book note when we observe them. So it's not in a proper job description statement. So the next process is for us, the job analyst, to write task statements. Okay, task statements. Once the tasks have been identified, the next step is to write the task statement that will be used in the task inventory and included in the job description. Okay, remember, after we identify the task, not all of those information will be included in job description. Second, before that, we need to analyze first. Before we will be able to analyze them, putting it in proper forms, which we call as a task inventory, we need to put a proper statement. Okay, give a proper or write a proper task statement. So a properly written task statement must contain an action. Okay, what is being done, must contain an object to which the action is done, must contain where the task is done, okay, also must contain how it is done, why it is done, and when it is done. Okay, that is a properly written task statement. Action, object, where the task is done, how it is done, why it is done, and when it is done. Okay, characteristic of well-written task statements. Okay, it usually contain only one action. Okay, one action should be done to one object. Okay, not many objects, what we call as double barrel or triple barrel. Task statement should be written at a level that can be read and understood by a person with the same reading ability as the typical job incumbents. Okay, you cannot expect that people, if the requirement of the jobs only primary school certificates. Okay, UPSR, previously we have UPSR, now no longer we have UPSR. So you cannot expect to write something very high in terms of the terms, clarity, very high in terms of the requires of cognitive to think. Okay, you must be straightforward and simple so that people, the job incumbent, can understand the statements. All task statements should be written in the same tense. If you are using future tense, if you are using, I don't think people are using past tense. Okay, you must be in the same tense. Okay, don't mix it with different sentence structure or different tense. The task statement should include the tools and equipment used to complete the task. Okay, this is very rare. Sometimes they only mention that you need to teach, you need to do research, but don't mention the tools. Task statement should not be a policy. Okay, task statement should not be a policy. For example, treats people nicely. Okay, that's not supposed to be in the task statement because it's a policy. So what is the policy of UTM? Okay, what is the motto of UTM? Okay, for our faculty, mendidik dan menginsan, for example, educate and what is another term for English? Humanize. Okay, so basically that type of statement should not be written in the task statement because that is the motto or the philosophy or sometimes the policy of the institution. The statement should make sense by itself. Okay, you don't requires other aspect to go and explain or requires the incumbent to go and find other extra sources to understand or references to understand the statements. Okay, and for the last ones, for activities that involve decision making, the levels of authority should be indicated. These levels lets the incumbent know which decision she is allowed to make on her own and which she needs approval from a higher levels. Okay, so you need to mention if you are assistant director, what types of decision making that you can make. Okay, what are the levels of approvals? I still remember when I did my degrees involved in student activities, clubs, and then we have to write proposal for programs. So there are different levels of approval. If it's a 5,000 ringgit programs, we only require approval from the principal of the college. If it's more than 5,000, we need to acquire permissions from the students activities departments. We call it as STAT in my previous institution. And then if the program is more than 20,000, it requires the deputy vice chancellors for academic affairs. If more than 50,000, it requires approval of the vice chancellor himself. Okay, so there are different levels of decision making according to position. Okay, and then we need to write them in the task statements. Okay, after we write a proper task statements, we need to do task analysis. Okay, in that we go to the third process, which is read task statement. Okay, once the task statements has been written, usually it's a lot. Okay, sometimes goes to hundreds of task statements. Okay, including some 200 tasks, for example. The next step is to conduct a task analysis. So what is task analysis? We are using a group of subject matter experts to rate each task statements on the frequency and the importance or criticality of tasks being performed. So we go and meet subject matter expert and ask them to answer our inventory, okay, which have task analysis. They need to answer from two perspectives. One is how frequent the task is being performed by the incumbents, okay, the frequency. Second, how important the task is. Okay, so they need to answer it from two perspectives. So this is the examples of the what we call the answer format or the rating of the task statements. Okay, for the frequency, if the task is not performed as part of this job, the SMEs need to take or to choose 0. 1, if task is seldomly performed. 2, the task is occasionally performed, and 3, the task is frequently performed. Okay, that is on one perspective. Another perspective, the SME need to evaluate on the importance of the task. Okay, with 0 unimportance, 1 important, job will be diminished if the task was not completed properly, and 2 essentials, more than important, the job could not be performed effectively if the incumbent did not properly complete this task. Okay, so after the SMEs answer, rate it, evaluate it, and we take it back, so we need to do the task analysis. After SMEs raise each task, the rating will be analyzed. Okay, this is the evaluation criteria, whereby the frequency is any answers after we calculate them. If for each task, okay, if for a particular task receive frequency rating of below than 0.5, then we should exclude that task. Or importance of below than 0.5, we exclude them as well. Okay, we exclude the task as well. Or the combination between frequency and importance less than 2, we also exclude the task from the list. So this is the examples. You can see that there are 4 subject matter expert. There are 2 subject matter experts, or they call it raters. There are 4 tasks there, and see the difference between the rating given by the two subject matter experts. So we need to record them, and then we need to properly analyze the task. Okay, after we basically get the task and then write task statements and do the task analysis. Now the next step is we need to determine essential KESAUS, knowledge, skill, abilities, and other characteristics. Okay, KESAUS, also known as competencies, also known as job specification. K for knowledge, a body of information needed to perform a task. S for skill, the proficiency to perform a learned task. A for ability, the basic capacity for performing a wide range of tasks, acquiring a knowledge or developing skills. And O are the characteristic factors that are not knowledge, skill, or abilities, such as personality, willingness, interest, and in fact their degree. So these are the examples of the KESAUS rating, more or less similar to the rating for the task statement or for the task analysis. You also evaluate from 2 perspectives: importance and when it is needed. Okay, so KESAUS is not needed if 0. 1, KESAUS is helpful. 2, KESAUS is important or essential. When it's needed, 0, KESAUS is not needed. 1, KESAUS is needed after completion of field training. 2, KESAUS is needed after completion of the academy. 3, KESAUS are needed for the times of hire. If you refer back to your textbook, you will know that this rating is basically an example from the police officer. Okay, for the police officer, so it might not be applicable to all according to the wordings of the rating. So these are an example of how to determine the KESAUS. Okay, so again, same under the determining KESAUS, there are 2 methods to determine important KESAUS. Okay, first, we need to link the task to the KESAUS. Okay, remember we have the task. We have, say for example, 100 tasks, and then to complete that task, what are the knowledge needed? What are the skill needed? What are the ability needed? So we link them. Okay, we can write beside it, or we can produce another forms. Or in a more standardized way, we can use questionnaires, what we call as pre-packaged questionnaires. For the first methods, linking tasks to KESAUS, logically linking tasks to KESAUS, once the list of the essential KESAUS has been developed, okay, when through the rating, another group of subject matter expert is given the list and asked to rate the extent to which each of the KESAUS is essential for performing the job. Okay, we ask them to rate the essentiality of performing the jobs. That is by using linking tasks to KESAUS. For the next one, we use the pre-packaged questionnaires. Okay, KESAUS can be identified using structured methods, such as we use job components inventory, we use threshold traits analysis, we use Flashman job analysis survey, we use critical incident techniques, and we use personality related position requirements form. Okay, PPRF, quite mouthful like that. Okay, so these are basically the 2 ways that we can determine essential KESAUS. When I did that, I don't use the pre-packaged questionnaires, but instead I'm using the first method, which is logically linking tasks to KESAUS. And the last part, in the common method of job analysis, we need to do we need to identify the appropriate method, the appropriate selection methods or tests to tap the KESAUS, to examine the KESAUS, to evaluate the KESAUS of the potential job incumbents or the potential new employees. The next step is to determine the best methods to tap the casaus needed at the time of hire. Okay, remember we already differentiated what are the casaus needed upon hire, what are the casaus needed after hire, after 4 months, after 4 years, after 5 years, for examples. And this method will be used to select new employees, okay, for the time for the casaus upon hire. For example, interviews, we can use interviews, we can use work sample tests, we can use ability tests, we can use personality tests, we can use reference checks, we can use integrity tests, we can use biodata, and we can use assessment centers. There are in fact other types of selection procedures, or what we call as pre-selection methods. Okay, I use selection procedures for my masters. Some would call it as selection techniques, some would call it as selection methods. Okay, they are basically referring to the same things. The average ratings obtained from step 4. Okay, what is step 4? Determine essential casaus will be used to weight the test score. Okay, what does this mean? Okay, when we get the list of knowledge, skill, abilities needed to perform the task, not all are on equal importance. Okay, some will receive more rating, 4, okay, or 3.5 or 2.9. Some will receive less than 2. Of course, we omit that. But for those who receive 2.1, 2.2, they are not, we interpret it as it is not as important as the casaus that receive the rating of 4. So we will prioritize the casaus that receive higher score as compared to the casaus that receive the low score. So for example, casaus with rating of 2.9 should receive more weight than the test tapping a casaus with a rating of 2.5. Okay, so those are the 5 important steps of doing job analysis, and these 5 processes are the common method which applicable in most of profession, and in fact it's very comprehensive and requires a very and give a very detailed information on the tasks, duties, and as well as the casaus and other aspects such as the performance criteria, the job context, and etc. Okay, beside the common methods of job analysis, we also have the alternative methods on how to conduct job analysis. So for the alternative methods, usually it's very specific on what methods for providing general information about workers' activities, providing information about tools and equipment, methods providing information about the work environments, and methods providing information about competencies. That's why at the beginning of discussing about the methods of job analysis, I mentioned that for the alternative methods is very specific and mostly is not applicable to all job professions, or in fact to all informations in the job analysis or the job description itself. So it's very specific. But as far as I'm concerned, we as students of IO psychologists, when learning about job analysis, we also need to be aware that there are other methods which are quite structured, and they have their own way of doing things, acquiring information through structured or established questionnaires. So for the methods providing general information about workers' activities, remember, if the common methods, we have to interview, we have interviews, we have doing the participation, as well as where we interview the subject matter experts. But for the alternative methods, okay, methods providing general information about workers' activities, we can use at least 4 questionnaires. Okay, 4 questionnaires. First, we can use position analysis questionnaires, PAQ, or we can use job structure profile, JSP. We can use job elements inventory. We can also use functional job analysis. Okay, functional job analysis. So these are the 4 alternatives for us to use to acquire information for the works activities. Second, if we want to find out about the tools, the equipment used by the job incumbents, we can use job components inventory. Job components inventory. And if you want to find out information about the work environment, the context that people are working, we can also use ergonomics job analysis procedures, or called as AET, Ergonomics Job Analysis Procedure. So we can use that. And for the most part, how can we identify the knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristics, the KSAUs or job competencies? We can use other methods as well. So methods providing information about competencies, such as we can refer back to the ONET, Occupational Information Network, ONET, or we can use critical incident techniques. We can use critical incident techniques. We can also use job components inventory, JCI, and or we can use threshold traits analysis, TTA. We can also use Flashman's job analysis survey, FJAS, or we can use job adaptability inventory, JAI, or we can use personality related position requirements forms, like I mentioned previously, quite mouthful. Or lastly, we can even use performance improvements characteristic, PIC. So every of these, they have their own way of conducting their own questionnaires and their own forms. So there are specific methods and procedures for that. If you go to the levels of you want to conduct analysis, job analysis itself, or you want to provide the trainings, you need to go and have a proper readings and comprehension on these parts. But as of now, this is enough for you to understand that beside the common methods of job analysis, there are alternative ways for each part. For the four parts of job description, which is work activities, tools and equipment use, work environments, as well as the KSAUs. So now we have many methods. We have of course, we have one common method, and we have the alternative methods. So what is the best method to use? What is the best method to use? So in your textbook, it gives quite a good overview in the form of these tables on job description sections. You can see that if you are using interviews, you can answer, or you can gather information for all types of information required for the job description, including specific tasks, general duties, tools and equipments, job context, performance, compensation, competencies, and etc. All information required can be gathered through interviews. So basically, if you embark into interviews, you can have all of the needed information. But of course, there are always issues of cost, financial cost. There are always issues of time, time consuming. So for the observation, you can get information for specific tasks, general duties, tools, and job contact, as well as competencies, but not on the performance and compensation. For job participation, the first three in the common methods, we can use the information for specific tasks, general duties, tools, job contacts, and competencies. You can see that most, or in fact all of the specific or alternative methods of job analysis, they are very specific. They are specific to general duties, they are specific to job contacts, and they are specific to competencies. So the best method to use in analyzing a job is depend on the end use of the job analysis information. So what we want to gather, sometimes the new job, the new job that we are required to do the analysis is a new jobs, a new position, new created, or it's been too long. But sometimes, in some cases, it's only required a review. Why? There are changes. The pandemic, for example, there are changes. They have their job description in 2017 or 2018, and then come 2019, 2020, the pandemic comes, and then most of the job activities are not changed. Maybe small part are changing, so they just want to do a review or update of their job description. So they do not have to go to the whole process, the common process. Maybe they want to look at the duties, contacts, and competencies. In that case, they can use the PAQ. Or in that case, they can use JSP or JEI. So it's depending on the situation and depending on what is our goals or objective of doing the analysis or the review. Different methods are best for different use. For examples, for worker-oriented methods such as the CIT, the JCI, and the TTA traits. The traits these are basically good or very informative for the selection and performance appraisal. For For the job-oriented methods, for the alternative one, such as task analysis, is good for work design and writing job description. So it depends. Okay, it depends on what are our purpose of doing the job analysis. Okay, so those are everything that we need to understand for the second part of this lecture, which is conducting job analysis. So in this part, we've discussed the three main aspects of the job analysis. We discussed on the common methods, we discussed on the alternative methods, and we discussed on how on evaluating which method is best to use at a particular time.